The summer sun beat down on Jerry's ice cream parlor, the kind of old-fashioned shop where chrome stools sparkled and the smell of fresh waffle cones drifted through the air. A young boy, no more than 12, stood in line with his wrinkled $5 bill clutched tightly in his hand. His mom had given him this money as a reward for getting straight A's on his report card, and he'd spent the whole morning thinking about which flavors he'd choose. The shop was busy that afternoon, filled with the gentle hum of conversation and the tinkling of the bell above the door. The boy had been saving this moment all week, dreaming of treating himself to a double scoop of ice cream. He kept glancing up at the flavor board, changing his mind every few seconds between Rocky Road and Butter Pecan, while carefully smoothing out his crumpled bill on the edge of the counter. What the boy didn't notice was the quiet entrance of Keanu Reeves, who had slipped in through the door wearing his usual casual outfit, a well-worn jacket, and simple dark sunglasses. Keanu loved finding these small, authentic places in Los Angeles where he could blend in with everyday people. He stood a few spots behind the boy, watching with a gentle smile as the young customer meticulously counted and recounted his money. The ice cream parlor had that classic 1950s feel, with black and white checkered floors that had been polished until they shone. Old photos lined the walls, telling stories of the shop's history through faded snapshots of happy customers from decades past. The ceiling fans spun lazily overhead, creating a peaceful atmosphere that made everyone feel like they'd stepped back in time. Through the large front window, sunlight streamed in and caught the rotating ice cream display, making the various flavors glisten like jewels. The boy had finally made up his mind. He was going to get 1 scoop of chocolate chip and 1 scoop of strawberry, a combination his grandfather had always said was the perfect mix of classic and exciting. A group of teenagers sat in one corner booth, sharing a giant banana split and laughing over their phones. An elderly couple at the counter stepped on old-fashioned malts, their hands clasped together like they were still on their first date. It was the kind of scene that reminded you how ice cream shops had always been more than just places to get a cold treat. They were where memories were made. The young boy had almost reached the front of the line now. He stood on his tiptoes, practicing his order in a whisper while watching the server scoop ice cream for other customers with expert flicks of their wrist. His excitement was visible in the way he bounced slightly on his feet, the way kids do when they're trying their best to contain their joy. Keanu observed all of this with quiet appreciation. He loved these small moments of pure, uncomplicated happiness. The boy reminded him of himself at that age, when a trip to the ice cream shop felt like the biggest adventure in the world. Little did either of them know that this ordinary afternoon was about to become something much more memorable, a story that would touch hearts and change lives in ways none of them could have expected. The old-fashioned jukebox in the corner played soft doo-wop music, adding to the timeless feeling of the moment. The whole scene was like a painting of everyday American life, people from all walks of life coming together over something as simple and pure as ice cream. Nobody in the shop could have guessed that in just a few minutes, this peaceful scene would become the setting for an unexpected confrontation that would teach everyone present an unforgettable lesson about kindness, respect, and standing up for what's right. The peaceful atmosphere of Jerry's ice cream parlor suddenly shifted when the door swung open with unnecessary force. The bell above didn't just tingle, it jangled sharply, causing several customers to look up from their treats. A large man in a black leather vest covered in patches strode in, his heavy boots thudding against the checkered floor. The sound of a motorcycle engine still rumbled outside, gradually fading into silence. The young boy was just 2 people away from ordering his ice cream when he felt a rush of air beside him. The biker had walked straight to the front of the line, squeezing past others as if they weren't even there. His leather vest creaked as he leaned against the counter, completely ignoring the fact that he'd just cut in front of several patient customers, including the boy with his carefully smoothed-out $5 bill. For a moment, the boy just stood there, his heart beating a little faster. He thought about what his teacher had told their class about standing up for themselves while still being respectful. Taking a deep breath, he gathered his courage and spoke up in a clear, polite voice. "Excuse me, sir. There's actually a line." The biker turned slowly, his silver chain wallet jingling. He looked down at the boy, and his expression changed from indifference to something more unsettling. The temperature in the ice cream parlor seemed to drop several degrees, despite the warm summer day outside. Other customers shifted uncomfortably, suddenly becoming very interested in their ice cream cups or phone screens. "Well, look who thinks they can tell me what to do," the biker said, his voice carrying across the now quiet shop. He took a step closer to the boy, using his height to intimidate. "Maybe where you come from, they didn't teach you about knowing your place." The words came out dripping with prejudice, making their meaning impossible to mistake. The elderly couple at the counter set down their spoons. The teenagers in the corner stopped mid-laugh, their banana split forgotten. The server behind the counter froze, ice cream scoop suspended in mid-air. It was the kind of moment where everyone knew something wrong was happening, but fear and uncertainty kept them rooted in place. The young boy's fingers tightened around his $5 bill, crinkling it slightly. His grandfather's words echoed in his mind about staying strong and dignified in the face of prejudice, but right now that felt harder than ever. He could feel his cheeks burning with a mixture of embarrassment and anger, but he stood his ground, even as his legs trembled slightly. The biker wasn't done. He looked around the shop with a smirk, as if expecting others to join in his amusement. "Bet you think you're real brave, huh? Speaking up to grown folks." He leaned down closer, his voice getting quieter but somehow more threatening. "Let me teach you something about how things work in the real world." The jukebox in the corner had coincidentally stopped playing, making the silence in the shop even more deafening. The sunlight streaming through the window now felt harsh and exposing, highlighting every uncomfortable shift and averted gaze of the other customers. The old photos on the walls seemed to stare down in disappointment at how their happy little ice cream parlor had suddenly become a stage for such openness. The boy thought about just walking away. His ice cream money felt heavy in his hand now, and the excitement of choosing flavors had been replaced by a knot in his stomach. But something kept him rooted to that spot on the checkered floor. Maybe it was his grandfather's voice in his head, or maybe it was knowing that if he walked away now, something important would be lost. Something more valuable than ice cream or money or even pride. What nobody in the shop realized was that Keanu Reeves was still standing near the back, watching everything unfold. His sunglasses were now in his hand, and his casual afternoon expression had been replaced by one of quiet determination. As the biker opened his mouth to continue his tirade, Keanu took a step forward, about to transform this moment of cruelty into something entirely unexpected. The quiet footsteps approaching from the back of the ice cream parlor barely registered over the tension in the air. But there was something about the way Keanu Reeves moved through the space that made everyone take notice, not because he was trying to be noticed, but because genuine confidence has a way of commanding attention without asking for it. He didn't rush. Each step was deliberate, like he was giving everyone, including the biker, a chance to think about what was happening. His well-worn jacket rustled softly as he walked, and the sunglasses in his hand caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows. The expression on his face wasn't angry. Instead, it carried the kind of calm determination that comes from absolute certainty about doing what's right. As Keanu reached the boy, he placed a gentle hand on the young shoulder, feeling the slight trembling beneath the summer t-shirt. The touch wasn't just supportive, it was a silent message to everyone in that ice cream parlor that this child didn't stand alone. The boy looked up, his eyes widening as he recognized who had just stepped beside him. "I believe," Keanu said in that distinctive voice that had captured audiences worldwide, "this young man was here first." The words were simple, but they carried weight. He wasn't just talking about a place in line. He was talking about basic human dignity, about the right to exist in a space without fear or humiliation. The biker's reaction was immediate. His face cycled through several emotions in quick succession: shock at recognizing Keanu Reeves, embarrassment at being called out, and confusion about how to handle this unexpected turn of events. His leather vest suddenly seemed less intimidating and more like a costume he was hiding behind. "Oh man, you're John Wick," the biker stammered, his earlier bravado evaporating. But Keanu raised his hand slightly, cutting off what might have been an attempt to transform bullying into fan adoration. "Right now," Keanu said, his voice carrying clearly through the now silent ice cream parlor, "I'm just someone who couldn't stand by and watch injustice happen. And I think you're better than this too." He paused, letting those words sink in. The wonderful thing about ice cream shops is that they're meant for everyone. Every single person who walks through that door deserves to feel welcome. The elderly couple at the counter nodded in quiet agreement. The teenagers in the corner had their phones out but weren't recording. Something about the moment felt too important for social media. The server behind the counter stood straighter, as if Keanu's words had reminded them of the simple dignity of their workplace. "You see this $5 bill?" Keanu gestured to the carefully smoothed paper in the boy's hand. "It represents more than money. It represents a special moment, a reward, a simple joy that everyone deserves to experience without fear." His voice remained gentle but firm, teaching rather than condemning. The sunlight through the windows had shifted, creating a warm glow that seemed to soften the harsh edges of the situation. The old photos on the walls looked down on a scene that was becoming less about confrontation and more about transformation. Even the jukebox seemed to understand the moment, playing a softer tune that floated through the air like a peaceful backdrop to this unexpected lesson in humanity. "I've been fortunate enough to play heroes in movies," Keanu continued, "but real heroism. That's what this young man showed when he politely stood up for himself. That's what anyone shows when they choose respect over intimidation, kindness over cruelty." He looked directly at the biker now, not with judgment but with an invitation to be better. The boy stood a little straighter, his trembling had stopped. Sometimes courage doesn't come from facing down threats, it comes from knowing that goodness exists in the world, that there are people willing to stand beside you when you need them most. The $5 bill in his hand wasn't crumpled anymore, it was ready to buy not just ice cream, but a memory of the day when kindness proved stronger than fear. The biker's tough exterior began to crack like ice on a spring morning. His shoulders, which had been squared aggressively just moments before, slowly dropped. The patches on his leather vest, dragons and flames that were meant to intimidate, now seemed to shrink under the weight of his embarrassment. He looked around the ice cream parlor, seeing for the first time how his actions had affected everyone in the room. I didn't mean to," he started, but the words trailed off. The truth was, he had meant it, and everyone knew it. But something was changing inside him as he stood there, faced not with anger or violence, but with Keanu's calm dignity and the quiet strength of the boy he tried to intimidate. Keanu took a small step forward, closing the circle between himself, the boy, and the biker. The afternoon sun streaming through the windows cast long shadows on the checkered floor, like nature itself was drawing a line between who they had been 5 minutes ago and who they could choose to be now. "You know," Keanu said, his voice carrying the warmth of someone sharing a personal story rather than delivering a lecture, "I've experienced prejudice too. Being of mixed heritage, people sometimes make assumptions about who I am or where I belong." He paused, letting the words settle in the quiet shop. "But what I've learned is that those moments don't have to define us. It's what we do next that matters." The teenagers in the corner had put their phones away completely now, drawn into the real-life drama that was more compelling than any social media feed. The elderly couple held hands tighter, remembering their own battles against prejudice in their younger years. The server behind the counter had stopped pretending to clean the already spotless glass and was listening intently. The biker's face had transformed. The sneer was gone, replaced by something that looked a lot like shame, mixed with recognition. His eyes moved from Keanu to the boy, seeing him, really seeing him, for the first time. Not as someone to intimidate, but as a kid who just wanted to buy some ice cream on a warm afternoon, just like he probably did when he was young. "I grew up rough," the biker said suddenly, his voice rougher than before but somehow more genuine. "Nobody ever." He stopped, swallowed hard, and tried again. "Nobody ever called me out like this. They either fought back or ran away. But this," he gestured vaguely at the peaceful confrontation, "this is different." The boy, still standing straight and tall despite everything, watched the biker's transformation with wise eyes that seemed to understand more than his years would suggest. The $5 bill in his hand had become more than money, it was now a ticket to witnessing how people can change when given the chance. "Violence and hatred," Keanu said softly, "they're like heavy chains we carry around. But kindness?" He smiled gently. "Kindness is the key that unlocks those chains. And the beautiful thing is, we can choose kindness at any moment." The words floated through the shop like the sweet scent of waffle cones, touching everyone who heard them. The jukebox, as if understanding the gravity of the moment, had switched to a slowed, thoughtful melody. Outside, the street noise seemed to have faded away, leaving this small ice cream parlor in a bubble of transformation. The old photos on the walls were silent witnesses to a moment that would be remembered long after the ice cream had melted. "I was wrong," the biker said finally, the words coming out clear and strong, like he was relieving himself of a heavy burden. "I was wrong about everything." He turned to face the boy directly, his eyes clear and honest. "I owe you more than an apology, young man. I owe you a thank you. Because today, you and Mr. Reeves here taught me something I should have learned a long time ago." The tension in the room had completely transformed. What had started as a moment of cruel prejudice had become something else entirely, a lesson in humanity that nobody present would ever forget. And the best part? The story wasn't over yet. Sometimes the most important changes happen after the hardest moments have passed. The afternoon light had softened to a gentle golden glow inside Jerry's ice cream parlor, almost as if the sun itself wanted to create the perfect setting for what was about to unfold. Keanu gestured toward an empty booth in the corner, its red vinyl seats gleaming invitingly. "Why don't we all sit down for a moment?" he suggested, his voice carrying the kind of warmth that made it impossible to refuse. The boy slid into one side of the booth, his $5 bill still clutched carefully in his hand. The biker, after a moment's hesitation, eased his large frame into the seat opposite, his leather vest creaking softly. Keanu pulled up a chair from a nearby table, completing their small circle. "You know what's amazing about ice cream shops?" Keanu began, gesturing around at the walls covered in decades of happy memories. "They're one of the few places left where people from all walks of life come together. Rich or poor, young or old, everyone smiles the same way when they get their favorite flavor." The server, reading the moment perfectly, quietly brought over 3 ice cream sundaes, complete with cherries on top. The boy's eyes widened at the elaborate dessert placed before him, much grander than the simple cone he planned to buy with his $5. Keanu smiled warmly. "This one's on me. All of them are." He turned to the biker. Sometimes the sweetest conversations happen over ice cream. As they began to eat, Keanu shared stories from his own life, growing up in Hawaii with a Chinese-Hawaiian father and English mother, facing prejudice and confusion about his identity. "People often want to put you in a box," he explained, stirring his ice cream thoughtfully. "But life isn't about boxes. It's about breaking them down and building bridges instead." The biker listened intently, his sundae melting slightly as he absorbed every word. "I never thought about it that way," he admitted, his voice softer than before. "Growing up, everything was about being tough, showing no weakness. But maybe," he glanced at the boy, "maybe I've been teaching myself the wrong lessons all these years." The boy, who had been quiet but attentive, spoke up. "My grandpa always says that strength isn't about making others feel small. It's about lifting them up even when they've tried to push you down." His words, simple but profound, hung in the air like the sweet scent of waffle cones. Keanu nodded approvingly. "Your grandfather is a wise man. And you know what? True toughness isn't about leather vests or loud motorcycles. It's about having the courage to admit when we're wrong and the strength to change." He looked meaningfully at the biker, who was nodding slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. Around them, the ice cream parlor had returned to its normal rhythm of customers coming and going, but their booth remained in its own bubble of transformation. The teenagers in the corner had stopped pretending not to listen and were openly watching this unexpected lesson unfold. The elderly couple at the counter smiled knowingly. They'd seen enough of life to recognize real change when it was happening. "I've played a lot of roles in movies," Keanu continued, "but the most important roles we play are in real life. Every day, we choose what kind of person we want to be." He paused, letting a spoonful of ice cream melt on his tongue. "And the beautiful thing is, we can always choose differently than we did yesterday." The biker reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a warm leather wallet. Inside was a small photo of a young boy, himself many years ago, standing proudly next to a bicycle. "I was about your age in this picture," he said to the boy across the table. "Life was simpler then. Somewhere along the way, I forgot what it felt like to be young and just wanting to enjoy a simple pleasure like ice cream." As their sundaes disappeared, something new was appearing in its place: understanding, respect, and the kind of connection that can only happen when people truly see each other as human beings. The boy's $5 bill lay forgotten on the table, a small reminder of how this ordinary afternoon had turned into something extraordinary. Outside, the sound of passing cars and city life continued, but inside this booth, time seemed to slow down, allowing this moment of growth and healing to take root. Sometimes the biggest changes start in the smallest places, even in an ice cream parlor on a warm afternoon. The late afternoon sun painted long shadows across the checkered floor of Jerry's ice cream parlor as three unlikely companions finished their sundaes. Empty glass dishes sat before them, decorated with only traces of chocolate sauce and tiny pools of melted ice cream. The boy was using his spoon to chase the last bit of whipped cream around his bowl, while the biker sat back in the vinyl booth, looking more relaxed than he had all day. "You know what?" the biker said, breaking a comfortable silence. "I need to do more than just say sorry." He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a business card, slightly bent at the corners. "I run a motorcycle repair shop across town. Been doing it for 15 years. He placed the card on the table, sliding it toward the boy. "Your bicycle ever needs fixing, you bring it to me. No charge. Ever." The boy picked up the card carefully, reading the shop's name and address. His eyes lit up with genuine surprise at this unexpected offer. "Really, my bike's gears have been sticking lately," he admitted, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Bring it in tomorrow," the biker nodded firmly. "I'll teach you how to maintain it too if you want. Every kid should know how to take care of their ride." His voice carried the enthusiasm of someone who'd found a way to make things right, not just with words, but with actions. Keanu watched this exchange with quiet satisfaction, noting how the tension from earlier had completely dissolved into something genuine and hopeful. "Sometimes," he said, "the best way to heal a wrong is to create something good in its place." The elderly couple who had witnessed everything from their counter seats stood up to leave. As they passed the booth, the old gentleman paused, placing a gentle hand on the biker's shoulder. "What you did today, admitting you were wrong and trying to make it right, that takes real courage, son." His wife nodded in agreement, her eyes twinkling with wisdom and approval. The biker's weather-worn face softened at these words. "You know, I've got a weekly meet-up with other bikers," he said thoughtfully. "We usually just talk about motorcycles and plan rides, but maybe," he glanced at Keanu and the boy, "maybe we could do something more. Use our rides to raise money for youth programs, be a force for good in the community." The teenagers in the corner, who had been pretending not to eavesdrop all afternoon, couldn't contain themselves any longer. One of them spoke up. "My little brother's school needs new playground equipment. Maybe your biker group could help with that." The ice cream parlor had become more than just a place for sweet treats. It had transformed into a space where new possibilities were being born. The server behind the counter had stopped wiping the already clean glass and was listening intently, clearly moved by how the afternoon was unfolding. "You see," Keanu gestured around the shop, "this is how change happens, not through big speeches or grand gestures, but through small moments of connection, through people deciding to be better today than they were yesterday." The boy reached for his $5 bill, but the biker gently pushed it back across the table. "Keep it," he said. "Use it to buy ice cream for someone else who needs a bit of kindness in their day." His voice carried the weight of someone who had learned an important lesson and was eager to pass it on. The jukebox in the corner started playing an old song about friendship and understanding, as if it too wanted to be part of this moment of transformation. Outside, the sound of motorcycles rumbled past, but now instead of seeming threatening, they just seemed like another part of the city's symphony. "Before we leave," the biker said, standing up slowly, "I want everyone here to know something." He looked around the shop, making eye contact with each person who had witnessed his journey from anger to understanding. "What happened here today, it's not just going to stay here. I'm going to make sure this lesson ripples out, touches others who need to learn it too." The late afternoon light streaming through the windows seemed to glow a little brighter, as if nature itself was applauding this promise of change. In that moment, Jerry's ice cream parlor wasn't just a shop anymore. It had become a place where hearts could heal and new beginnings could take root. 6 months had passed since that transformative afternoon at Jerry's ice cream parlor. The autumn leaves were now dancing in the breeze outside the shop's windows, and the story of what happened that summer day had spread through the neighborhood like ripples in a pond, touching lives in unexpected ways. The boy's bicycle gleamed like new in the October sunlight, its gears working smoothly thanks to regular maintenance lessons at the biker's shop. Every Saturday morning you could find him there, learning not just about bicycle repair, but also about life from someone who had become an unlikely mentor. Other kids from the neighborhood started showing up too, wheeling in their bikes with squeaky chains and flat tires, all receiving the same warm welcome. The biker's repair shop had transformed as well. The walls, once covered only with motorcycle posters, now displayed photos of community events and thank you letters from local schools. His weekly biker meetups had evolved into something bigger. A group called Riders for Change that organized charity rides and community service projects. The tough-looking bikers could often be seen helping at local playgrounds, delivering toys to children's hospitals, or teaching kids about bike safety. Keanu had kept in touch, stopping by the repair shop whenever he was in town. He never made a big show of his visits. He'd just slip in quietly, chat with the kids learning about bikes, and share a smile with the biker who had become a force for good in the community. Sometimes they'd all end up at Jerry's afterward, sharing ice cream and stories about how life had changed since that summer day. The ice cream parlor itself had become more than just a local hangout. The owner had put up a small plaque near the door that read, "Kindness changes everything," a subtle reminder of the day when prejudice melted away like ice cream on a hot afternoon. The elderly couple who had witnessed everything still came in for their weekly malts, always pointing out the plaque to newcomers and sharing the story with pride. The boy's $5 bill? He had used it exactly as suggested, buying ice cream for another kid who looked like they needed cheering up. That kid did the same for someone else, and so on, until it became a kind of tradition at Jerry's. People would sometimes leave a few dollars behind, marked for the next person who needs a smile. One crisp autumn afternoon, the boy was working on a bike at the shop when a group of tough-looking teenagers walked in. The old him might have felt scared, but now he stood tall, greeting them with the same confidence he'd learned that summer day. To everyone's surprise, the teens went there to cause trouble. They'd heard about the free repair lessons and wanted to learn. They'd seen how the neighborhood was changing and wanted to be part of it. The bikers' transformation had inspired others in unexpected ways. Other local businesses started their own community programs. The teenagers who had witnessed everything that day had started a mentoring program at their school, helping younger kids stand up to bullying with dignity rather than violence. Small acts of kindness were becoming contagious. Regular customers at Jerry's noticed something else too. The atmosphere had changed. People from all walks of life didn't just share the same space anymore. They shared stories, smiles, and simple moments of connection. The jukebox still played its old tunes, but now they seemed to have new meaning, playing soundtrack to a community that had learned to see past appearances and prejudices. On particularly quiet afternoons, the biker would sometimes share the story with new customers, not hiding his past actions, but using them to show how people could change. "It took a kid's courage and a movie star's wisdom to teach me what real strength looks like," he'd say, his voice carrying the humble pride of someone who had learned life's most important lessons in the most unexpected place. The photos on the walls of Jerry's ice cream parlor still told the history of the shop, but now they also captured new moments. Pictures of community events, charity rides, and people from all backgrounds sharing simple joys over ice cream. And in one corner, there was a small snapshot of three unlikely friends: a boy with a bright future, a biker with a changed heart, and a movie star who had shown that sometimes the most heroic acts happen not on the big screen, but in the small moments when we choose to stand up for what's right.